You're watching Study with Sudhir. My name is T.S. Sudhir and this is your digital classroom. We are looking at the story called The Black Aeroplane, which is the second story about flying. We've already done his first flight, that fascinating story about the young seagull who gets on to his first tryst with flying, as it were. And this is the second story which talks about a black aeroplane. Now, what was the black aeroplane about? Where did it come and who found it? We'll know about this in very short story, but a very nice and interesting and mysterious kind of a story. Now, the moon was coming up in the east behind me. The stars were shining in the clear sky above me. So, it's a description of the atmosphere at that point in time. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was happy to be alone high up above the sleeping countryside. I was flying my old Dakota aeroplane over France back to England. So, we are talking about an English pilot flying back from France back to England to be going back home. Dakota is a type of a military aircraft. Okay. At one time, it was considered one of the premium kind of aircraft, not so much anymore. I was dreaming of my holiday and looking forward to being with my family. I looked at my watch, 1:30 in the morning. So, you're talking about pitch darkness. I should call Paris control soon, I thought as I looked down past the nose of the aeroplane. I saw the lights of a big city in front of me. I switched on the radio. You see, pilots always communicate with the air traffic control, the ATC as it is called, and that's what this particular pilot is doing now. Paris control, Dakota DS-088 here. Can you hear me? I am on my way to England. Over. Okay. So, that's the kind of language lingo that pilots and the ATC generally speak, the ATC controllers, which is manned 24 hours round the clock. The voice from the radio answered me immediately. DS-088, I can hear you. You ought to turn 12 degrees west now. DS-088 over. So, they give him the precise directions as to which kind of path, air path, he should actually continue to take on his way to England. I checked the map and the compass. Compass is the way which kind of tells you the directions. Switched over to my second and last fuel tank and turned the Dakota 12 degrees west towards England. I'll be in time for breakfast. I thought a good big English breakfast. Everything was going well. It was an easy flight. So, it's pretty comfortable. He knows nothing can go wrong. I've got into the flight path. I've spoken to the Paris air control and here I am, and I'll be in time in England at my home for a good English breakfast. Paris was about 150 kilometers behind me. So, he has to cross the English Channel to get to the UK. When I saw the clouds, storm clouds, they were huge. They looked like black mountains standing in front of me across the sky. I knew I could not fly up and over them, and I did not have enough fuel to fly around them to the north or south. So, if he has to kind of navigate around them, he would be spending more time, and we have already been told that he has got onto his last fuel tank, last of his fuel tanks on the Dakota aircraft. So, he doesn't have too much of fuel. So, he needs to now ensure, he has to now decide that whether to go through the storm clouds itself. I ought to go back to Paris, I thought, but I wanted to get home. I wanted that breakfast. So, for some reason, he's very enamored with the idea of having a good, healthy, sumptuous breakfast at home. I will take the risk, I thought, and flew that old Dakota straight into the storm. Now, if you have seen, whenever you're flying, the pilot will say turbulent weather, please fasten your seat belts, and you would have sometimes, very turbulent and the aircraft will move. That's when you get into an air pocket, into the clouds, and that's what causes all that turbulence. That's what is happening now with the Dakota. Inside the clouds, everything was suddenly black. As it is, it was 1:30, right? It was 1:30 in the morning. It was impossible to see anything outside the aeroplane. The old aeroplane jumped and twisted in the air. I looked at the compass. I couldn't believe that my compass was turning round and round and round. It was dead. It would not work. The other instruments were suddenly dead too. I tried the radio. Paris control. So, he's now he's having a sense of panic. So, he's kind of trying to establish contact with the Paris control, which is 150 kilometers behind him. There was no answer. The radio was dead too. So he's there in the middle of nowhere up in the sky, in between these dark clouds, having absolutely nil contact with the outside world, with anyone who can actually help him. And I could not see where I was. I was lost in the storm. Then in the black clouds quite near me, I saw another aeroplane. Now that's very strange. He saw another aeroplane, which is a little strange because when you're given a flight path, it's obviously to ensure that no two aircraft come very close to each other. But here he was being given, he was seeing with another aeroplane beside him. There was no light on its wings, but I could see it flying next to me through the storm. I could see the pilot's face turned towards me. I was very glad to see another person. He lifted one hand and waved. Okay, so just remember these instances because you could get a question as to what was the sight that the pilot saw in the other aircraft. So you would need to use many of these phrases, words, in order to establish your familiarity with the text. Follow me, he was saying, follow me. He knows that I'm lost. I thought he's trying to help me. He turned his aeroplane slowly to the north in front of my Dakota so that it would be easier for me to follow him. So now he's not following the directions given by Paris control tower. He's following the instructions given by this other aircraft. I was happy to go behind the strange aeroplane like an obedient child. After half an hour, the strange black aeroplane was still there in front of me in the cloud. So he could see and he was just following him, the directions given by the second aircraft. Now there was only enough fuel in the old Dakota's last tank to fly for 5 or 10 minutes more, and once the fuel runs out, he could just crash. So it was a sense of fear and panic that was beginning to set in. I was starting to feel frightened again, and then he started to go down. So he started to descend for a landing, and I followed through the storm. Suddenly I came out of the clouds and saw two long straight lines of lights in front of me. It was a runway, an airport. I was safe. I turned to look for my friend in the black aeroplane, but the sky was empty. There was nothing there. The black aeroplane was gone. I could not see it anywhere. I landed and I was not sorry to walk away from the old Dakota near the control tower. I went and asked a woman in the control center where I was and who the other pilot was. I wanted to say thank you to the other pilot who had saved his life. She looked at me very strangely and then laughed. Another aeroplane? Up there in this storm? No, no other aeroplanes were flying tonight. Yours was the only one I could see on the radar. So who helped me to arrive there safely without a compass or a radio or without any more fuel in my tanks? Who was the pilot on that strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? So it's a suspense story. You are not given any answers, right? My own surmise is, since it was late at night, he possibly slept off, right? And he saw this very strange dream that he was guided through these black clouds by an alien kind of an aeroplane being piloted by a strange person whose identity he was not aware of. Otherwise, obviously, if there was another aeroplane, it would have been spotted on the radar, right? Or it could be the story where some kind of a unidentified flying object, UFOs as they are called, is being suggested. We do not know. It's a very fascinating short story, but it leaves you with some kind of goosebumps. Oh my God, in the middle of nowhere, dark clouds, dead of night, no control established with anywhere, and he was guided by a stranger in an aircraft, right? But it's a little strange because initially he finds that the compass etc. were not working, but she says that, well, there was no other aircraft on the radar. Yours was the only one that was flying in the night. So the kind of questions that you would possibly get, for instance, in 2016, the question asked was, why did the lady in the control room give the pilot a puzzled look? So she gave him a puzzled look when he asked her about the whereabouts of that black aeroplane, because she knew that it was not possible for any sensible man to fly in this bad weather. Moreover, no other plane was actually seen on the radar. So she's kind of a little bewildered and surprised by this kind of a question, because there was no other aircraft that she had spotted on that radar. But it's also quite possible, because it's a suspense story, that just like the plane disappeared, the aeroplane had also ensured that it was not spotted on the radar. I would guess UFOs may also not be picked up by all kinds of radar. So various possibilities are there. We do not know, if you are asked to give a different kind of an ending or to explain what could have happened, these are the different possibilities you could actually write about. 2012, I'll take the risk. What's the risk? What does the pilot of the old Dakota, why does the pilot of the old Dakota take the risk? So he was talking about, flying the Dakota into the storm, and he took this risk because he wanted to reach home in time for a nice breakfast with his family. So that came in 2012. Among the long question answers, you could be asked about the experience as he flew the aeroplane into the storm. So you would need to know the exact details, and that's what you would that would get you good enough marks. And how did the author come out of the black cloud safely? Again, attention to detail. So while you are reading it, read it a couple of times, mark the key words that you would need to remember and use them in your answers while you're explaining what really happened. So this story is essentially about, of course, the suspense part of it, but also you need to talk about what really happened through the course of that journey from Paris to England. Okay, so I hope you have understood and also enjoyed this story, a very fascinating story that leaves you wondering what really happened. Thank you very much for watching all the CBSE Class 10 poems and stories and chapters and essays. They have been explained here on Study with Sudhir. So please do have a look at the playlist. I'm sure it will add a lot of value to how you actually fare in your examinations. Thank you very much for watching.